The week slipped by in a blur of stolen smiles and shared moments as the sun rose on the morning of Sebastian's birthday. Sicil felt an unfamiliar but deeply satisfying sense of contentment as she stood by the window, watching the first rays of light filter through the curtains. She and Ethan had been navigating their complex dynamics with patience and understanding, and while things weren't perfect yet, they were undeniably better. But today wasn't about Ethan. It was about Sebastian. The thought of him brought a flutter of nervous excitement that bubbled up from deep within her. She had been planning this day for weeks, carefully orchestrating every detail to ensure it would be a memory he cherished forever. After seeing him off early in the morning, following a quiet midnight celebration that was just theirs, Sicil launched her plan. She picked up her phone and dialed Sebastian, putting on her best groggy voice. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone laced with faux exhaustion. "I've come down with a stomach bug. I think it's best I take the day off and rest." Sebastian, however, was not one to be easily fooled. He called barely an hour later, his voice laced with worry. "You were perfectly fine when I left," he remarked. "Are you sure you don't need me to come over? Maybe bring some medicine?" Sicil chuckled softly, hoping the warmth in her voice would mask her nerves. "I think I just ate something that didn't sit well," she said, feigning a weak laugh. "I'll be fine after some rest, don't worry." Sebastian's skepticism was evident, but he didn't press further. "All right, just call me if you need anything, okay?" "Promise," she replied, smiling even though he couldn't see it. The moment she hung up, Sicil let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "He's going to figure this out," she muttered to herself. But there was no time to dwell. Sebastian's home soon became a hive of activity as Sicil, Jenny, and a few of their close friends worked together to transform the space into a birthday wonderland. Sicil arrived first, along with Jane lugging boxes of decorations and immediately taking charge. "All right, everyone, let's make this the best birthday surprise he's ever had," Jenny declared, pulling Sicil into a quick hug. They were halfway through hanging fairy lights when Aunt Jasmine arrived with her 2 young children in tow. The moment Sicil saw the mischievous grins on their faces, she knew exactly who they were. The little tornadoes Sebastian had written about in his letters. "Aunt Jasmine," Sicil exclaimed, rushing to greet her. "You made it!" "Of course," Jasmine replied, her eyes twinkling. "I wouldn't miss this for the world. Though I hope you're ready for these too." She gestured to her kids, who had already started chasing each other around the room. "They're perfect," Sicil said, laughing as one of them nearly knocked over a stack of balloons. "Sebastian's mentioned them so many times. I feel like I already know them." The house quickly filled with laughter and playful chaos. The children's antics kept everyone on their toes, and Sicil couldn't help but feel a warm connection to them. Watching them reminded her of how fondly Sebastian had spoken about his family in the past. By late afternoon, the house was a vision of celebration, with balloons, streamers, and a cake that Sicil had painstakingly chosen taking center stage. "Do you think he'll cry?" Jenny asked as they admired their handiwork. "He'd never admit it," Sicil said, smiling. "But I think he'll be touched." In the meantime, Sebastian called Sicil multiple times throughout the day, his voice laced with concern as he checked in on her illness. With each call, Sicil reassured Sebastian that she was fine, doing her best to sound convincing despite the nerves that fluttered in her stomach. When Sebastian arrived at Sicil's house in the early evening, flowers in hand and worry etched on his face, the housekeeper greeted him at the door. "She's not here," the housekeeper said with a knowing smile. "Everyone's waiting for you at your place." Confused, Sebastian made his way home, his heart racing with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. As he stepped through the door, a chorus of voices erupted. "Surprise!" Sebastian froze, his eyes widening as he took in the scene. The room was filled with friends, family, and colleagues, all smiling at him. Before he could process the sight, 2 small figures hurtled toward him, nearly knocking him over. "Uncle Sebastian!" his nephews shouted in unison, clinging to his legs. Sebastian's heart melted as he knelt to their level, wrapping them in a tight embrace. "What are you 2 doing here?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. He glanced up to see Aunt Jasmine standing nearby, her smile warm and knowing. "You didn't think we'd miss your big day, did you?" she said. Sebastian's gaze shifted back to his nephews, his expression softening. "You two are the best surprise of all," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As the evening unfolded, Sebastian was swept up in the warmth and love of the celebration. He moved through the crowd, thanking everyone, but his eyes always found their way back to Sicil. When he finally reached her, he pulled her into a quick hug. "You planned all of this?" he asked, his tone a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Sicil nodded, her cheeks flushing. "I just wanted to make your day special," she said softly. "You lied about being sick," he teased, his lips twitching into a smile. "Guilty?" she admitted, laughing. "Well, you're forgiven," he said, his voice warm. "This is incredible. Thank you, Sicil." Towards late in the evening, Sebastian guided Sicil to the heart of the garden, where a breathtaking gazebo stood adorned with twinkling fairy lights, fragrant blossoms, and a cascade of soft petals falling like whispers of a dream. The gentle hum of conversation faded as if the world itself was holding its breath. Beneath the velvety canopy of stars, Sebastian turned to Sicil, his eyes aglow with a tenderness that made her heart flutter. "Sicil," he began, his voice low and steady but brimming with emotion. "From the very first moment you stepped into my life, you brought with you a light I didn't even know I needed. Your kindness, your laughter, and your unwavering spirit have transformed my world in ways I never thought possible." His grip on her hand tightened slightly, as though grounding himself in the weight of this moment. "You've been my anchor in chaos, my solace in the storm, and my reason to dream again." His voice cracked ever so slightly, and Sicil felt a lump form in her throat as her eyes filled with tears. With a nervous yet heartfelt smile, Sebastian slowly dropped to one knee, the world around them melting into the background. Gasps rippled through the gathered friends and family as he looked up at her, his face illuminated by a glow that seemed to come from within. "Sicil Anderson," he said, his voice steady with conviction and love that echoed through the quiet evening. "Today, on my birthday, I want to ask for the greatest gift I could ever hope for. You, standing beside me, making life's triumphs brighter and its trials easier to bear." Reaching into his pocket, he retrieved a small velvet box. As he opened it, the ring inside seemed to radiate its own light, capturing Sicil's breath and freezing the world around her. It was a daisy, its yellow sapphire at the center reflecting in her eyes, surrounded by sparkling diamonds forming delicate petals. It wasn't just a ring, it was a story, a perfect match to the daisy pendant, necklace, and earrings Sebastian had given her over the years. Each gift had come at a moment that mattered: a prom night, Sicil's birthday, and their declaration of love. Together, they had become symbols of their enduring love, growing from innocent beginnings to the deep connection they now shared. The ring was the final piece, tying their journey together, a promise of a love that would never fade, just like the daisy that had come to define them. "Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" he asked, his voice soft but resolute. "Will you walk through this life with me, hand in hand, heart to heart, sharing every moment, every dream, and every challenge? Will you be mine, as I am already yours?" For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The world narrowed to just the two of them. The intensity of his gaze, the earnest plea in his voice, the warmth of his hand still holding hers. Overcome, Sicil fell to her knees, her tears spilling freely as she cupped his face with trembling hands. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking but full of certainty. 1,000 times yes." The cheers that erupted from their loved ones blended with the night's melody as they leaned in a deep kiss, creating a symphony of joy and celebration. Sebastian slipped the ring onto her finger with reverence, as though sealing not just a promise but a lifetime of devotion. He rose, pulling Sicil to her feet, and their lips met again in a tender kiss under the canopy of stars. A moment of pure, unfiltered love that seemed to weave their souls together forever. As the party swirled around them in a celebration of their love, Ethan approached Sicil, enveloping her in a tight embrace. It wasn't just a gesture of congratulations, it carried with it an unspoken promise of unwavering support. When he released her, Ethan turned to Sebastian, his expression both protective and resolute. "If she's ever sad," Ethan said, his voice steady and filled with warning, "you'll have to answer to me." Sebastian met Ethan's gaze, understanding the depth of his words. "I promise, Ethan," he replied, his voice firm with sincerity. "I will dedicate my life to her happiness and her safety." The two men exchanged a silent pact, a shared vow to protect and cherish the woman who held their hearts in different ways. And as the evening continued, Sicil stood in the center of it all, surrounded by love, feeling like the happiest person in the world, her heart full of gratitude for the life she was about to begin with Sebastian.